Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anupecha Apecha Kritam Rapayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Bhutete Tanmaitaya Taravo Binedus Tam Savabhutam Hridayam Munimanatusmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshay Kiptashtakamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapanna Prende Namaste Charanada Vindam Tavevasmi Najivami Tvayavina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we're going to continue with the beautiful Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, chapter 12, about Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur meeting with Jagai and Madhai. What is it, snowing again?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
There's no clouds in the sky.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess it can do whatever it wants,
Yeah.
you know. Mystical power of the Lord and his empowered representatives, Lord Indra's crew. Any rate, so we begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanithalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Padasta Talsat Sri Srimad Abhaya Chanadavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru Pada Padmanithalita Bhavishta Om Vishnu Padasta Talsat Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, unto our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga and all the assembled Vaishnavis. We have a lot of assembled Vaishnavis. What is Rasaraj doing here? It's like 5 in the morning where he is. Usually he's half dead sitting in his chair at that time. And Subal from India, oh my goodness. Mukunda, Madhuri, Nityananda, Taruni, no Amal, and no Gora. But that's okay. So yesterday, we read up to verse 84, which was Toma Sabha Lagiya Krishnara Avatar, Hena Krishna Bhaja Sabha Chada Anachar. So this was Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur speaking to Jagai and Madhai. Krishna has incarnated for your benefit. Therefore give up all sinful activities and worship Krishna. That's good instruction for everyone, especially us, who have got some degree of appreciation of that statement. But it's very difficult to give up all sinful activities and to fully worship. So we read a good deal of that purport, but we didn't finish it. So I'm going to finish it now. I think, should I just read the whole purport again? It was a very technical purport. I'm going to read it without commentary. Well, I'm going to try not to comment. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada begins his purport by giving a translation of that verse, kind of a Bhavanuvad, right? Quote, the eternal pastimes that Swayamrup Krishna performs with his attracted associates in Braj are meant for removing the misfortune of the living entities. So to engage in service other than the worship of Krishna is most unbecoming. What a beautiful word, unbecoming, right? It doesn't suit you. It doesn't look nice. Therefore, understanding yourselves as attracted in your relationship with the Lord, you should try to awaken your constitutional propensities. In other words, that is our potentiality, to be one of the attracted associates. What are those? We spoke about this yesterday. The Ragatmikas, right? The Ragatmika devotees in Braj, right? And whom we are meant to follow and serve, right? Seva sadhaka rupena, siddha rupena chatrahi, tat bhava lipsanakaya, what is it? Bhavalokanu sarataha, right? Did I tap on a second verse from another one, the second half? Anyway, it means to follow in the footsteps of those who are already perfected, right? And seva sadhaka rupena, we should serve in our sadhak form very nicely, but also siddha rupena chatrahi, following in the mood of perfected personalities whom we are aspiring to be like, right? That verse is from Bhakti-samrita Sindhu. It's part of two verses, right? What is the other one? Oh, God. It is, oh, God. It's fuzzy in front of my eyes of my brain. Anyway, the verse means to Krishna smaram janam chasya, Krishna smaram janam chasya, prashtam smaram. Anyway, it means to also follow those perfected personalities, in other words, our gurus, who are absorbed in their own perfected state and are internally serving the eternal associates of Braj. They are also perfected, and they are, for instance, if we use our own gurus as an example, they are meditating externally as sadhaks, right? But and serving Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, and our line of Guru Varga. Internally, they're also meditating and serving those personalities in their perfected Braj forms, as Rupa Manjari, Rati Manjari, like that. So attracted associates, Krishna's performing activities with them, and he comes and performs his pastimes for the upliftment of all conditioned souls, to inform them of the beauty of the spiritual world, and then teaches it. And he teaches it as Mahaprabhu. He comes later in the beginning of the Kali Yuga to teach what he showed in Vrindavan as Swayamrup Krishna, with Radhika, with the gopis, with Nanda Maharaj, with Mother Jashoda, with Subal, Sridham, and everyone, right? So when living entities realize their constitutional position, proper behavior based on aversion to the service of matter can no longer remain absent, right? So then their propensity for worshiping Krishna becomes prominent, right? So we have to become informed, we have to study, we have to hear, right? And we also have to practice. You can't just chant, you can't just hear. At a certain state you can, but at our state, no. We have to awaken the propensity of service by hearing, to inform us, right, to give us guidance. But the activities of service overcomes the reluctant propensities of the mind and the senses, and clearly indicates our intention to put ourselves under the guidance, under the protection of Sri Guru, right? You can't just talk about it, you've got to do it, right? So when living entities realize their constitutional position, proper behavior based on aversion to the service of matter, right, can no longer remain absent. Proper behavior automatically springs up, right? Then their propensity for worshiping Krishna becomes prominent. Prominent means, in the beginning, prominence awakens when we come into madhyam, first by nishtha, when by informed intelligence, we forcefully control the senses and to our best efforts the mind. But when we begin ruchi and we're chanting Shuddhanam more and more, then the joy of service becomes genuinely experienced. And we begin to develop taste for chanting, for hearing, for all the limbs of bhakti. And then when that matures even more, genuine awakening for the object of bhajan, right? Those whom we are aspiring to serve and those whom we are desiring to serve under their guidance, right? Again, that's why as sadhaks we have to practice under guidance in this form, because in the spiritually awakened form, that under guidance is natural. Oh, I want to serve under the guidance of this gopi, of this cowherd boy, of Mother Jashoda or one of her friends, right? So, when liberated living entities belonging to impartial Krishna's marginal energy, in other words, Jiva Shakti to Tatastha Shakti, have slightly less good fortune, they worship Sri Ramachandra. Then, we read this yesterday, he talked about the gradations of worship, right? That the worship of Lord Ram, although exalted, is not as high because the exchange of ras is not as full, right? And he gives the example of the sages in Dandakaranya who wanted to worship Lord Ram in the mood of gopis, but found out they could not, right? So they were blessed by Lord Ram to take birth in the pastimes of Krishna, right? So he went on to explain that difference. The main consideration in the activities of this Advent is the incarnation of the magnanimous nature of Sri Krishna Chandra, the personification of sweetness. So now he goes back to Mahaprabhu, who is not different from Krishna, but he's Krishna showing his magnanimity, his generosity, his mercy potency to the greatest extent. I've come to give this freely to everyone, right? The worshipable Lord Sri Krishna Chandra descended in this world as Sri Gaur Sundar, who is the aggregate form of all devotees of Krishna. In other words, all the different incarnations appear simultaneously within Mahaprabhu because he is the source of all of them. And he assumes the role of a worshiper in different rasas and awards the opportunity to worship Krishna after giving up sinful activities in the form of material conceptions. So, as he is the source and embodiment of all incarnations, he also, in this form as Gaur Sundar, he tastes all the different rasas, all the different kinds of service to the Lord. Not just to Krishna in different rasas, as Saka, as parent, as beloved, but he actually also tastes service to the different incarnations and avatars. And he performs pastimes replicating that. We get a very good example of that in the pastimes of Lord Nityananda as a child, where to the astonishment of the entire village, he and his friends would enact the pastimes of Krishna, the pastimes of Ram, the pastimes of all the different incarnations, and taste those pastimes very deeply, right? From the perspective of the servant, right? So, the distinction of Krishna's worship has been revealed in the advent of Sri Gaura's pastimes of distributing Krishna Prem. Prior to that, not so much knowledge of the distinction or the fact that Krishna's Leela is topmost. Many were worshippers of Lakshman Narayan, Sita Ram, not knowing the difference. But Mahaprabhu revealing the speciality of Krishna Prem, the Prem experienced by the devotees in Braj. The ultimate perfection of the good fortune of the pious souls who have obtained the qualification for remaining engaged in the service of Sri Ram Sita, Sri Ram Vajragaji, Sri Lakshmi Narayan, Sri Vishvakshena Garuda Narayan, and the Chaturvyuha forms of Sri Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha is the supreme service of Brajendrananda. In other words, when he appeared, there were many great devotees of the Lord in these worshiping these different forms, and he brought them beyond that to the worship of Sri Krishna. We spoke about that yesterday. Not all, but many, many. So, in his form as Jagadguru, Sri Krishna Chandra, as the preacher of munificence, instructs the most pure living entities that Swayamrup Krishna has incarnated for the benefit of the marginal living entities who give up bad association and discriminate between modes of worshiping the Lord. In other words, they come to understand the distinction between worship of, say, Lakshmi Narayan and the worship of Radha and Krishna, the worship of Sita Ram and the worship of Radha Krishna. And they have given up bad association. Bad association can mean, obviously, materialistic people. And if you associate with them, you will maintain attachment to mundane things, giving up association with impersonalists, because that call to impersonalism is very strong still in the heart of the living entity, because it is freedom from material anxiety without having awakened the mood of subservience, loving service. So it's still very appealing and attractive. Ananda, great spiritual bliss, yes, without the necessity for service, which we have neglected since time immemorial. Or even bad association means unfavorable in the sense that if you serve people who are worshiping, say, Krishna and Dwarka, you may be inclined in that way, and that will keep you out of Braj. And there are many stories in that regard. One disciple of Gurudev, when she was growing up, was living in L.A., and she had a great desire to become a queen of Krishna, which is, a very lofty desire. And she lived in a temple that they called Rukmini Dwarkadish, right? And then Gurudev said, I've come to you to snatch you away. These queens, they want to take you. I'm going to snatch you away from them and take you to Braj. So, and then there are many other stories, but we want to continue this purport here. Now I got to tell this story. Because it's very instructive. You think, what could be the harm of going to Dwarka and worshiping Krishna? If you're mature in your bhajan, maybe 200 years ago, there's a story of one Babaji in Vrindavan, one of the towns in that greater Braj area, was a great devotee of Srimati Radhika, worshiping Radha and Krishna. And he had many friends, also advanced devotees worshiping in that same mood. But one day an acquaintance, a Brahmana, said, I'm going to Dwarka. Would you like to come with me? I'd like some company. I'll pay your way. He's very poor, and it always nurtured a desire to go and see Dwarka, right? So he's thinking, yes, I would like to go. And so they went, and in those days when you went to Dwarka, to go in, you had to get a brand on your arm. And it was a chakra, which indicated, now I am a servant of Rukmini Dwarkadish. And they'd brand you, and then they'd put some Ayurvedic medicine on, so it'd take the pain away. But you would be marked in that way. And so he went and he got the brand. But when he came back, and he sat down in his little hut, and he began his bhajan, trying to meditate on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, he couldn't. The only pastimes that were coming into his mind, into his heart, were the pastimes of Krishna and Dwarka. Right? And this disturbed him. He was greatly devoted to Srimati Radhika. And try as he might, he could not invoke that sweet Leela. So he thought, I have to go and ask one of my friends. He had a very advanced devotee friend living at Radhakund. And so he's very perturbed, and he went there in a humble state of mind. Seeing him from a distance, that devotee said, don't come near me. I know what you have done. You've gone to Dwarka and you've taken the mark of being a servant of Rukmini and Dwarkadish. Srimati Radhika is not pleased with you. That's why you can't meditate on this Leela any longer. And if she sees me associating with you, then she may become displeased with me also. So they were very good friends before that, but now he was bad association. Great devotee, bad association. And he left completely distraught. And he went back to his hut, and he went inside and he locked the door from the inside, and he stopped eating and drinking and was only weeping in separation from Srimati Radhika and her service. And the townspeople, after some days, hadn't heard from him, hadn't seen him. They just knew he was in his hut. They knocked on the door, no response. Finally, after many days, they broke down the door, and all there was inside was a pile of ashes where he would sit. And somebody went and took a piece of cloth and put it on the pile, and it burst into flame. And they could understand that in his separation, he had just consumed, his body had been consumed. Like mystic fire, right? He had left his body, which he had to do, because that body was marked by the sign of Rukmini Dwarkadish. So even that is not favorable when you reach a certain point. At our stage, you can read Mahabharata, you can read Ramayana, you can read all of that, but you should read it with the understanding that this is the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. But if you really want to make advancement, you reach a certain point and you only hear those pastimes. And when you come into Bhav, then you only meditate on a certain stage of Bhav only on Ashtakaliya Leela, right? This was the stage that Vijay Kumar, the uncle of Brajanath in Jivadharma, reaches and meditates on the shores of Jagannath Puri. Right? So, Krishna's teaching that for those who give up, materialistic habits, right, bad association, and worship his Swayan Rup, right? This is what Mahaprabhu was teaching. So, give up bad association and associate with that Satchid Ananda object, and constantly worship him while considering yourself an ingredient of one of the 5 rasas, somewhere in Braj. Ultimately, we really want to be Palyadasis of Radhika. So he goes on and he explained many things about the different rasas, the 12 different kinds of rasas, 5 primary, 7 secondary, the different forms of Krishna, the different forms of Sri Baladev, and Krishna's statement of Jayatam mam prapadyante tangstataiva bhajamyaham. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Generally, as sadhaks, we think of that in terms of the more sincerely I do my sadhan, the more I'll be freed from these material attachments. Krishna will reciprocate and he'll help me. But it also means in a deeper way, according to the mood that you develop in your advanced bhajan to serve and worship me, I will reciprocate with you. If you want to serve me as in Sita Ram form, I'll reciprocate like that. If you want to serve me in Dwarka, I will reciprocate with that. But if you want to serve me in Braj, then you have to associate with my Gaudiya Vaishnavas, following in the footsteps of Mahaprabhu. This is what Mahaprabhu came to give. This is what all of our acharyas have come to give. When Srila Prabhupada is, Gauravani Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Prachardine. This Gauravani, this teaching of Mahaprabhu, worship and a distribution and awakening of Braj Prem. And most specifically, the service to Srimati Radhika. Right? Unnata Ujvala Rasam Svabhakti Sriyam, service to her. Right? So, although all our worship of Krishna, all these other forms of worship, only those who have realized the purport of the statement, Krishna's statement, I am Krishna, worship me, she states in Bhagavad Gita and other places, Uddhav Gita, are qualified to obtain the darshan of Sri Krishna Chandra's munificent form of Sri Gaur Sundar. This is what Mahaprabhu really came to give, right? Knowing that, because Mahaprabhu comes, this some form of the Yuga avatar comes in every Kali Yuga. But in other Kali Yugas, the holy name is given, but generally it's for Vaikuntha ascension. The speciality of Krishna himself, following his own pastimes in the Dwapara Yuga, is to give access to this, right? And Arpita Charim Charat Karanaya Vitirna Kalo. Very rarely, only once an entire day of Brahma, it's this very special and rare love offered. Okay? So, okay, let's see. So we read this. We were reading about Lord Brahma, Namacharya, Srila Haridas, coming as gurus to teach this on behalf of Mahaprabhu to everyone. We read that. Let's see. We read about Garbhadakshay Vishnu, Paramatma, Karnadakshay Vishnu, Shiradakshay Vishnu. So, the moment the attracted souls are distracted, they glance towards Maya from Vaikuntha. What does he mean from Vaikuntha? He means not from some Vaikuntha planet, because he's talking about souls that have not, the description in Jaiva Dharma very, very clearly, and Srila Prabhupada's statements in 7th canto, Srila Prabhupada's statement in the introduction of 8th canto, 3rd chapter, is that living entities that fall into Maya, they're coming from Vaikuntha in the sense that they're coming from the body of Mahavishnu. That is the spiritual realm. But they have not fully awakened their identity. He calls them attracted living entities, but if they were fully developed in their identity and their love of God, they couldn't be distracted, right? Because there is no Maya, Mahamaya, in the Vaikuntha planets, Vaikuntha realm. They can only see that coming from the glance of Mahavishnu. Then they can see either Maya or the spiritual realm. They can look this way or that way, right? So the moment the attracted souls are distracted, they glance towards Maya from Vaikuntha. At that time, the universe is created, and material enjoyment overcomes the constitutional duties of the living entities belonging to the marginal potency of the Lord, and makes them averse to Krishna. This aversion to Krishna induces the conditioned souls to become bewildered with incomplete thoughts of Brahman and Paramatma. And in their incomplete conceptions of Brahman and Paramatma, they are covered by their individual material sentiments. Since Krishna, so even realization of Brahman and Paramatma are very incomplete and still have some taint of independence. Even worshiping Paramatma, it's somewhat impersonal because one is only in awe of that beauty of the Lord and the inclination for an attachment to the sense that this is my Lord and I am his servant. That's not really awakened yet, right? It's not really awakened. That mamata comes in dasya ras, right? The shanta ras, incomplete. So they're covered by their individual material sentiments. And they don't have full understanding. This is why in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Gopakumar goes to Tapalok and Janalok, he interacts with the great sages there who are engaged in this kind of meditation, Pipalayana Rishi. And they teach him this, and he himself engages in this meditation on Paramatma, and he is overcome by the bliss of seeing that form to such an extent he forgets everything. And he becomes merged in that bliss. But in that bliss, he loses his sense of self, and he loses any sense or inclination towards service. And when he comes out of it, he describes that experience to the sages, and they say, oh, very good, this is great. But he's unsatisfied with it because he wants to render service. He wants to exchange love with the Lord through service. And they have some debate. It's a very important part of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, right? And he gives that up, actually, entirely. Ultimately, he goes to the planet of Lord Brahma, gets even further instruction, right? And keeps going, encounters the impersonal Brahman, becomes attracted to that, but is saved by association, finally goes to Vaikuntha, right? The Vaikuntha realm, and even that won't satisfy him. Any case, without getting distracted from the progression that he's saying here. So, at the time the universe is created and material enjoyment overcomes the constitutional duties of the living entities belonging to the marginal potency of the Lord and makes them averse to Krishna, right? Because those constitutional duties, when one is within the glance of Mahavishnu, the semblance of the glance carried by Shambhu, right? If they look towards Maya, their propensity for service, which is not awakened yet, becomes covered by Mahamaya, and they become attracted to that. Why? By chance, by indifference, by neglect. It's described in many ways why that happens. If, on the other hand, they had happened to look towards the spiritual realm, then what happens? The spiritual energy, Suddha Sattva Visheshatma, the combination of Samvit and Ladini Shakti, comes into the heart, descends from that spiritual realm, and then they attain that. And there's no possibility of Mahamaya being able to overcome that awakening and attraction. But before that's awakened, then we can easily come under the control of Maya. So since Krishna himself is the shelter of all rasas, Baladev, his principal manifestation, is also the shelter of all rasas. This Baladev Prabhu simply engages in the worship of Krishna. Right. If all of his rasas are tasted in service to Krishna. He even can serve in the conjugal mood because he has a special form as a Nanga Manjari. Right? So he also has parental mood, protecting and guiding Krishna as his older brother. He has his mood of friendship as a cowherd boy, as the senior in the cowherd boys, and he has the mood of das. Everybody in Vrindavan has the mood of das, right? But it's das influenced by their specific relationship as a friend. Of course, they're all serving Krishna. They give their lives to wipe the sweat off Krishna's brow, or as parents, or as beloveds. Das is there, and it takes increasingly higher and higher forms according to whether they're friends or parents or beloveds, right? And friendship, of course. The gopis have friendship. They do the same service that Mother Jashoda does. They'll dress Krishna. They'll feed Krishna, right? They have all the sentiments, but in the most perfect and high form. So, this Baladev Prabhu simply engages in the worship of Krishna. If one accepts the principle of Jata Toror Mula Nishechanena, pouring water on the root of the tree, then there will not be any deviation in the subject of discrimination in the worship of Krishna. In other words, the tree has many leaves, which are all part of the tree, right? And if you want to nourish that tree and think, oh, I want to nourish this leaf, I want to nourish that leaf, if you water the leaves or the branches independently, it won't help. The tree won't get any benefit. But if you water the root, then automatically all the branches, all the leaves, every aspect of the tree is nourished. So, worship Krishna. Then everything is accomplished. So then, just like watering the root, taking shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya in different rasas, some remain properly situated under the shelter of conjugal attraction, while some announce their good fortune by remaining situated under the shelter of parental attraction. Remember, we heard about Jagadish Pandit the other day, how in Mahaprabhu Leela he had that mood of attraction as in parental affection towards Mahaprabhu. The attracted Rasik devotees of 2.5 rasas engage in the hemispherical Vaikuntha service rather than the most complete Goloka Vrindavan service. What do they mean by 2.5 rasas? In Vaikuntha, you have Dasya, right? But Sakya is not really very well developed. Parental affection is not developed. And even the mood of the consort of Lord Vishnu is not fully developed because there's this awe and reverence and this recognition of him at every stage as God. So these rasas, and even in Ayodhya, they're not fully developed, right? So it's 2.5 rasas. They can't fully manifest. They don't engage like the most complete Goloka Vrindavan service. They then obtained less munificence and respect the path of opulence. Who represented that? Srivas Pandit. As Narad Muni has many forms of service to the Lord, but in his Narad form, he's a worshiper of Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha. And as Srivas Pandit, he manifests that. And during the Rath Yatra festival, when they did the pastime of the goddess of fortune, coming to claim her husband and take him back, right, Hara Panchami, he was so much thrilled by seeing the opulence of the goddess of fortune and her anger and her forceful chastisement of the servants of Lord Jagannath. And he proclaimed to everyone the superiority of Lakshmi. But Sup Damodar wasn't having it, and they had a big debate. And Sup Damodar defeated him and saying that the love of the gopis, although it looks to be less opulent, is actually far more opulent and far more complete. Right? So Mahaprabhu has devotees in all the different rasas, very dear devotees. Right? So Murari Gupta was Hanuman himself, right? The brother of Sanatan and Rupa. Anupam is a worshipper of Sitaram. Many like that. So they respect the path of opulence. The deviation of the conditioned souls and the deviation of the liberated worshippers of the Lord is completely different. The deviation in Vaikuntha is the absence of completeness, while the deviation in the material world is sinful activities and is totally fit for rejection. So it's deviation in the sense that they're not embracing or experiencing the topmost rasas, the topmost of what Mahaprabhu came to give. But they're satisfied spiritually, and Mahaprabhu is satisfied with them. And that's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita very clearly. For the conditioned souls, the energy of Ram Vaikuntha is preferable to the energy of Mahavaikuntha. Right? Mahavaikuntha Lakshmi Narayan, Ram Vaikuntha, more intimate, more human-like, right? Therefore, the rasa cherished by the Rasik worshippers of Sita Ram and Hanuman Ram establishes from an impartial consideration a special feature distinct from the rasa cherished by the devotees of Lakshmi Narayan and Vishvaksena Narayan in Vaikuntha. Right? Ram is more complete. In consideration of the and if you ever heard Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj describe the pastimes of Sita Ram, the separation of Ram from Sita, and the anxiety that he experiences, and the covering of his own by his own Yogamaya. Where is my Sita? Where is my Sita? Right? The intimacy with his brother Lakshman. Lakshman's sense that I have to protect Sita and Ram. I'll stay up all night. I've given up eating and drinking for the entire time while they are in exile so that I can guard and protect them. Right? The devout service mood of Hanuman, much different than the service mood of those in Vaikuntha. Ram needs and wants my service. There's deep mamata. Right? So, in consideration of the variegatedness of the energetic devoid of energy, the worship of the Chaturvyuha headed by Vasudeva is superior to knowledge of the impersonal Brahman. For there is no possibility of attributing mundane abomination in such worship. The worshipable object is not under the control of Maya. He is fully independent and unimpeded. Therefore, Brajendra Nandan, in his most munificent combined form of Radha Krishna, shows that in the worship of Krishna, the topmost worship of Sri Radha Govinda surpasses the progressively superior worship of Vasudeva Krishna, that's Krishna in Mathura and Dwarka, Lakshmi Govinda Krishna, there is a special prakosht there, and then Sita Ram Krishna. Such compassion is immeasurable and unlimited. That is why Swayamrup Mahaprabhu began to teach the service of Hari to everyone through his Prakash Vigraha and Jagad Vidata. In other words, through Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Haridas Thakur. All right. So, they're still calling out what's going to happen. Tomorrow we're going to hear, on hearing their call, the two turned their heads and their eyes became red with anger. Okay, so finally, what's going to happen when they're first confronted with the genuine mercy of Nityananda and Haridas Thakur? They're going to say, after lifting their heads and seeing the forms of the sannyasis, the two ran towards them shouting, "Catch them! Catch them!" And Nityananda and Haridas quickly ran away as the two rogues chased them, shouting, "Stop! Stop!" Abusing them with harsh words, they chased behind the two Prabhus who ran away out of fear. And people say, "Oh, we warned them, we warned them." So that's what we'll start with tomorrow. And this is going to be kind of amusing, because in that, Haridas Thakur is going to start chastising Nityananda for this foolish act of trying to preach to these two. And because he's older and small, short legs, a little fatty, he can't keep up. Nityananda's full youth, long legs, he can run forever. And Haridas, today I'm going to die. Why did I listen to this avadut, What has he gotten us into? But they're going to make it back safely, and then Haridas is going to recount this to Mahaprabhu in a disturbed state, and everybody's going to relish the pastime. So we'll stop here. All right. Offering obeisance to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, all these devotees. Go Premanande Hari Bol.